Hey everyone, I'm Beef, and welcome to my video on a mech gun. Yeah, building a mech gun. I'm not very good at voiceover stuff. I don't like doing the after footage voiceover. This is very weird. This is my, what, 5th, 6th, 19th time trying to read out a script. It sounds, woo, and I sound bleh anyway to start with. So yeah, me reading off a script is terrible. Anyway, building a mech gun. Yeah, but before any of that, I just want to say sorry for the lateness of this video. My son has been very, very unwell, and we've been in and out of the hospital with him. Thankfully, now he's on the mend, but he was kind enough to share his lurgy with me as well. So I got sick on top of that afterwards, which was great, but hey ho. Anyway, back to the hobbying. So, I started working on the wheels and the main body of the gun. I still wasn't happy with how the wheels fit together because, again, I just can't seem to get them to fit flush. They always seem to have a gap. And if any of you guys out there know how to solve this, know how to put wheels together correctly, or if I'm just dumb, I don't know. But let me know down below. I'd really, really appreciate it. So I decided to go with sprue glue to try and fix the gaps, and I used a lot of sprue glue. I mean, a lot of sprue glue, and some time with a sanding pad, one of those little foam ones that you have for like manicures and stuff. They're really, really good for miniatures, really, really good. And yeah, the wheels were kind of done, so I continued building up the main body and selecting which side panel I wanted and building up the power box, and just a few twitches later I had it together. And speaking of twitches, the next bit took its first casualty. The small railing. I snapped it due to a twitch. But it's fine, plastic glue fixes everything. So I gently nudged it into place and continued on. And I was wondering how I was going to paint all the details on the rear console. I then built the rest of the gun and decided what weapon choice I was wanting. I decided to go with the custom mega cannon as I like the look of it, and I think it's a good option in any battle. I think, personally. It's got pretty good range. Yeah, it looks fun. It looks fun. Then, whilst doing that, casualty number 2 hit. The front loop of the gun I broke off with another twitch, and thankfully it was just that, because I ended up literally punching my desk with this one. So yeah, pretty fun, but again, plastic glue fixes everything. So I assembled the parts of the gun and realised that it had a big gap in it too. Yeah. So I think in future I am going to try and use milliput for gaps instead of sprue glue. If I feel whilst dry fitting that I can get away with using sprue glue to fix them together instead of applying it after, I'll do that. But I think for things that are just far too severe, I'm going to use milliput. I'm going to have to be brave and try and do that. Thankfully though, this time it seemed as if the sprue glue actually worked. So I put it all together to see how it looked, and it was ready for primer. But before all of that, I remembered about the crew and the fact that they needed bases. Yeah. Now, I'm not sure if I'm going to stick with this wooden floor base thing, as I'm not doing freebooters anymore, but for now I decided to keep with it, as I'm currently working on a new video with a basing idea that may or may not be a hit. I don't know, it could be a miss. I'm going to try it anyway. It's going to be fun. So keep your eye out for that one. So I pulled out my snips, got to work, cutting the pieces to shape. I super glued the bases and put the wood on top, only to realise that I had accidentally glued a base to my mat. Oh dear. A bit more snipping and some filing down and they were ready to go. I decided to use some cheap brown and white paints for the base, as I thought there was no point wasting my good paints on wooden bases that are too porous and just going to absorb it all anyway. So I grab a big brush and water down the paint and slapped it on. I knew the wood would soak it up, like I said. So it took a few coats, but it wasn't looking too bad. I then decided to highlight the edges with a little bit of a dry brush of white. I went a little heavy with it as I knew I was going to shade them with more brown. And once that was done, it was time for some earth shade. I knew at this point the wood had soaked up enough that it wouldn't waste the earth shade. So I watered it down and applied an even coat to the base. Then, casualty number 3. Now this is the big one. The cheap airbrush that I bought the other week, I broke it. Yeah, I twitched with putting the needle in, I think, or I've twitched with the nozzle, or I've done something. It's probably a twitch. I don't know if it is or it isn't. But either way, the thing broke and it's in the bin. So I treated myself to a brand new airbrush. And I chose an Evolution CR Plus. And let me tell you, this thing is amazing. I could instantly feel the difference when using it. And that's me as a beginner with airbrushing as well. It's really, really good. And obviously this thing should last me the rest of my life, as I know how to look after it properly now. Unless a Twitch claims it as well. I hope to God not. So, with my new airbrush in hand, I set off and I primed the minis. I decided to try a different undershade for the mini. I went for a burnt orange instead of a muddy pink like last time. I then went on and coloured the mini with Flash Kits yellow and decided to try out some highlights with some white ink too, which I was quite pleased with, although the camera really doesn't show it. I tried to mess around with some of the settings on the camera, but I think I've made it worse. I really do need to save for a new camera. Maybe you could help with that? You know, click the subscribe button or even check out my Patreon. Yeah, I've got one of those. It's new. There's not a great deal there yet, but in time. So I put the mini back together to get a look at it in yellow and see what I wanted to be what colour. I decided to start with the gun. I started with Hash Up Copper for the first time. I usually start with Lead Belcher, honestly, so this was really weird for me. I painted the barrel of the gun and the little spring on the back and the lights in a hope that it would like shine through with a really thin glaze, but sadly that wasn't the case. A little bit of foreshadowing there. I then moved on to Lead Belcher and picked out bits here and there which I thought worked, like little bits of the armor panels and the vents and grills and anything that sort of moves or should realistically be metal opposed to copper. I also did alternating colours down the barrel of the gun, which I thought looked really smart, and I was quite pleased with the end result. So, next was the metals on the body. Same thing, Hash Up Copper and Lead Belcher where I thought they were needed. And in no time at all, they were done. Next, it was time for some real paint. Yeah. So, I got my wet palette out and started with a Baden Black. Then I tried some Vallejo Cold White, then Mephiston Red, and finally some good old Moot Green. And after a little panel lining and some sprucing up here and there, it was starting to look like a real gun. Next up was the little spotter, and sadly I don't have any footage of him being painted up as life was still getting in the way at this point, but here he is with a red shirt. I don't know why I chose a red shirt, but I just figured he could be red shirt guy. Yeah, I think he came out really well, and I was super happy with the lenses on his binoculars. It is a real shame that they'll never see the light of day, being hidden behind that screen. But anyway, now it was time for the rest of the crew. And this is where I got really, really brave. And I took my first steps into base coating with an airbrush. I don't think I did too bad, honestly. I can see why people do this. It's so quick and easy. And thanks to all the airbrush cleaning videos out there, swapping colours was super, super easy. Especially Vince's videos on airbrush cleaning, by the way. Go and watch his hobby cheating and everything like that. Super fantastic, wonderful artist, wonderful creator. Yeah, highly recommend him. Anyway, I then gave them a little clean up as some of the spraying wasn't quite 100% and stuck them to the bases. I then wanted to try an oil wash, so I bought some white spirit, an oil paint, and found a trusty jar. Yeah, later on that jar wasn't so trusty. It ended up leaking all over me. I got oil paint everywhere. But anyway, I thought with all the videos of the new Terminators from the Leviathan box that what would be a better test model than an old Terminator? And in he goes. It was a little weak. Yeah. So I added more paint and gave it a round 2. That's better. But I need to mix it up more in the future, I think, as it came out still a touch clumpy. So I gave the crew a good dunk, wiped off any excess wash with a little bit of kitchen roll and set them aside to dry. Once they were dry, I gave them the 3 colour orc skin using Deathwolf Forest, Elysian Green and Moot Green, and some Mephiston Red and Bleach Bone for the mouth and teeth. I then did their metals and a final metal wash with Nuln Oil, and after a little bit of pizzazz, they were done. And here they are. Well, I hope you enjoyed this one, and I hope next video there'll be less loss in footage. Sorry again, but obviously my son's health does come first, understandably, as I'm sure you'll all agree if it was your family. Yeah. Anyway, I hope you like the minis, and happy hobbying, everybody. And another quick one again. Don't forget to click the subscribe button. I'll hopefully have something out a little bit faster than this one. Take care of yourselves. Bye.